What's going on, everybody? This is Jeff with Living in Arizona, and today we're going to talk about big business crushing small business in Arizona. Is this a thing? Or what do you need to know about opening a small business in the state of Arizona? So, if you're an entrepreneur or you are someone who's looking to move to Arizona to start up your own business or work in the small business environment opposed to a corporation, then that's what this video is going to be about. So let's go ahead and talk about that. And if you're excited about this video, crush up the likes. Let us know in the comments where you are tuning in from, and we will try to give you a shout out as this video goes along. So there's a lot of things to think about when you're talking about big business suffocating small business growth or the fertility of the small business entrepreneur. So one of the things that can happen if the pendulum gets too out of balance in the United States or any country is you kind of get these corporate kingdoms. And these corporate kingdoms basically slow down innovation to where no matter how great your idea is, you can't compete. Let's just give an example. Facebook dominates the social media. You have little social media channels like Snapchat and Twitter, but they just don't compete with Facebook. Facebook owns Instagram. Facebook owns WhatsApp. They also own Facebook. So because they're so big, it's almost like whenever someone comes up into their radar, they either kind of run them off the road or they say, look, we're going to buy you. And so they don't really let some other cool opportunity of social media come onto the equation because Facebook suffocates it. That's like a theory. And what I'm really talking about, in essence, is antitrust laws. I don't know if you guys are familiar with antitrust, but antitrust referred to as competition laws are statutes developed by the U.S. government to protect consumers from predatory business practices. Furthermore, consumers would be forced to pay higher prices and would have access to a limited supply of products and services. So if these corporations get too big, you, the consumer, are basically stuck with this Facebook as the main source of communication. And then it's owning Instagram and whatnot. So monopoly, whether you want to open up a corporate or a big business, a small business, or do business, or just be a consumer, you want the United States government to be using or enforcing antitrust and monopoly laws in some capacity, because some of these corporations get way too big. They become juggernauts and they run everyone else off the road, including the small business owner. And then you just get stuck with whatever they have to offer because there's no competition. And whether people like to admit it or not, Apple is basically the only cell phone provider that people really want to go with. Yeah, you have Android, but Samsung Android doesn't really compete with Apple. So you're basically, when Apple rolls out a new iPhone, it's $1,500, and you're like, how did phones go from $500 to $800 all the way to $1,500? Well, it's because they can get away with it because they hold the monopoly on the cell phone industry. So that's kind of some of the things you have to think about when you're talking about antitrust laws or anti-monopoly laws. So Scott Glick says he's coming in from a stormy Queen Creek. What's up, Scott? Miss Spinner says, what's up? Diane Hoover, Prescott Valley here. And Robert Vogel says, hello from Anthem. What's up, Robert? And so, yeah, so back on subject about the antitrust laws in the United States. It's important that we have that. Now, how does that play over and carry over into Arizona? So is Arizona a place that you can start up a small business? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do. There are some industries that are really startup friendly in Arizona, and you're not going to be too affected by some of these companies that, these large corporations in some industry. So what are some of those small business careers you can go into? HVAC installation and repairs. So because we have a lot of hot summers, HVAC is something you can go into. Something else that's in demand, and it's fertile territory for anyone who wants to go in and try and capture the market, cleaning services, whether it's residential or office cleaning. In some ways, education is also open season in Arizona. We've seen charter schools, private schools, language schools, any sort of education. You can have an opportunity. You can even do online education. You might not be owning the service that you're using, but you can do online teaching, and you can kind of do it at your own pace, whether you're someone with a master's degree or a doctorate. And I think some people, even with a bachelor degrees, can do it. Some other ones that are opportunities for you if you're a small business person: a virtual assistant. This is someone who works from home, but assist a person who maybe is a traveling nomad or a digital nomad, and you handle their stuff, but you do it from the comfort of your own home instead of driving to wherever they are. This virtual assistant thing is real. Okay, so you also can do other things like Uber. You know, people run their own Uber service, and then kind of on the side, they do other things with that. You have car rentals. People rent their cars, believe it or not. They'll have like a fleet of 5 or 6 cars, and they kind of rent out their cars willy-nilly. I mean, I know people who run a car rental business on the side. You know, they're really good at fixing up cars. It's like what to do with it. They use them for the car rental service, and then they end up flipping them and selling them. Obviously, there's Airbnb, which is the bed and breakfast stuff. People have found that to be lucrative. And then there's people who do like flipping homes. So if you're a handyman and you know how to, and you have that creative vision out here in Arizona, you can do house flipping, and it can work out for you, but you might have to put in a little bit of effort. Real estate. I mean, there's so much real estate to go around here, but we have a lot of real estate agents. A lot of people come out here and they try to be real estate agents, and some successful and some unsuccessful, but that's a way to work for yourself doing real estate. There's event planning. Not so much bike rentals, but that's something you could consider in a place like downtown Tempe, but no one's really capturing the market with that. And then you have other things like community meetups. Like one thing that I've noticed out in Queen Creek, you always have like, I would say maybe middle-aged people. They're asking, hey, do you know where I can get together and dance with other middle-aged people? To me, that's an opportunity for someone who wants to do these group meetups where you can charge a service fee, you know, to someone who's become a member of your thing. But with that service fee, they also get included transportation to go do activities. And, you know, it costs money to rent the vans, to rent the buses, to pay for the gas, to pay for the food, the snack lunch and all that. But there is some excess money that you can make off the top on that by doing community get-togethers. So those are just some ideas. Like I talked about the landscaping business, the cleaning business. These are ideas for people who are trying to get into the small business. And then for other entrepreneurs, there's so many other things to think about. Let me see what everyone's saying here. Darren Kroc, Arizona is not a state with a lot of corporate headquarters, lots of small businesses, too many low-paying service jobs and call centers. I'm working the same job here as I did in Arizona, but making a lot more. Okay. Sean David Meister, if the government decriminalized marijuana, I can open my own edible shop. Yeah, they were talking about that on 12 News about Arizona opening up opening up the laws for that, where we would actually go away from medical marijuana to recreational marijuana. And, you know, if they taxed it, they can make money. But is Washington better off? Is Colorado better off now that they've legalized it to full-blown recreation? We don't know. That's subject. No matter who you ask, you're not going to get it. If you ask someone who smokes pot, it's the best thing ever. You ask someone who doesn't smoke pot, they're like, it's a total failure. Let's see here. Scott, I disagree, Darren. I'm from Los Angeles, and here in Phoenix, I am in the exact same line of work, making more. Okay. So Scott's making more working here. Darren was making less working here. One thing, if you're new to this channel, Darren does not like Arizona, but he tunes into all these shows and shares with you people who are watching a pessimist viewpoint on Arizona, why you shouldn't move there. And we let them hang out because it's only fair to get the other side of the coin, right? Strong calm with Aaron Dunn. What about urban farming? I know it's a stretch in the desert, but it's an interest of mine. Urban farming in the desert. Wow, that's a wicked one because, I mean, you got to have greenhouses. So if you got greenhouses, you should be good to go. But I mean, what are you trying to do in your backyard? And what are you trying to grow? I mean, it depends on the crop. You can grow things out here. There are crops that will grow. This is just not the best place to be a farmer. But certain crops grow. Cotton is one thing that has historically grown very good in Arizona. That's fine, Darren. I understand what you're saying. It's good to have balance. I like to say, you know, you're just keeping us honest. Anytime we might get too carried away where we're like, oh, we love Arizona. And then Darren comes in and says, well, hold the phone. And, you know, so it's not a big deal. Linda G, fig trees and tomatoes grow great here. Yeah. Another thing that grows great in the winter, from my experience, is broccoli, cauliflower. Those are things that grow great. So if you're trying to go into that industry, in my backyard, I can do a live feed if you guys want me to in my backyard. I haven't done one for a while. I posted a video in Living in Arizona's group, but I haven't done a live feed from back there just to show you what 1 year's worth of progress looks like. I could show you some of the things that have thrived and held on through the year, and I could show you some of the things that were there that didn't hold on. I have a couple vines that are thankfully taken off, which I'm really excited about. Yeah, broccoli, you're going to do great with broccoli in the wintertime. Artichoke grows here in the wintertime. Tomatoes and bell peppers, I don't think grow in the wintertime because it gets too cold. But around about February, you plant tomatoes, you plant the bell peppers or any sort of peppers, Thai peppers, whatever, it's going to grow great. My dog does love carrots. Yeah, I actually saw a carrot that he was chewing on. Andrew says HVAC and plumbing is huge here too. That's true. Yes. Electricians also. So any service job related to that, if you can do plumbing, electrical, HVAC, those are three industries you shouldn't have any problem doing. If you're a landscaper and you want to open up a landscaping business, you shouldn't have a problem breaking into the market. It's a high turnover. It's not gonna build a mansion for you on top of the mountain unless you like really are intelligent and you set up like the valley wide and you just get hundreds of accounts. I mean, then you can make a lot of money. But I'm saying typically the electricians and the plumbers that I talk to, or the irrigation guys or the landscapers, they make around about $70,000 to $80,000 a year on a high end. But some come in and they open up these big companies that end up being really successful over time. But it's weird because it's hard to explain. I don't even want to get into it. That's a whole other subject in itself. And if you already work in construction or you work in any sort of any of that home improvement stuff, you know what I'm already talking about. It's just the drama that goes on inside of construction is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's a headache. And when it's 110 degrees out, you might question why you even do the job for the headache for pennies. Linda G, my tomatoes did great this spring and summer. Well, Linda, how did they do in the winter? Because I do have some tomatoes. I'm just worried that because last year the tomatoes died in the winter. Darren Crock, lots of small for-profit schools with commercials on TV every afternoon. Thank you to the 12 people who crushed up the likes. Okay, Jeff, I disagree about your, okay, so Island B says, Jeff, I disagree about your opinion about antitrust laws. You don't break up big business for the sake of breaking up big business. Antitrust laws are the reason why our railroad innovation halted. Okay, so maybe let me at least give my opinion on antitrust laws, and then you can respond. So antitrust laws in some industries, for example, airlines. We have Alaska, we have Delta, we have United. The reason we have so many different airlines is to create competition. In some industries, like big tech, for example, we don't have competition. One area where I think, if we're just going to talk about railroad, you only have one railroad, one rail system in the United States run by Amtrak. So no competition for Amtrak, no reason to do anything innovative or creative because that's the status quo. So if you have competition for Amtrak or Greyhound buses is another one. We just now started to get competition for Greyhound. But if you've ever driven on a Greyhound, you'd be like, whoa. Can we get some competition? Can I get an alternative to Greyhound? Now they have one called Megabus. But I mean, if you've gone on buses anywhere else in the world, they're usually superior to a Greyhound. Greyhound's just like, why ride a Greyhound? Have you ridden a Greyhound lately? I mean, that's the only thing we have. But then again, you could say there's not a demand for people who want to ride buses. People don't typically want to ride buses because they'll just take a car. Like, so the only people who ride buses are people without cars. Scott Glick says, hey, strong, calm. I'm in media and advertising and find the landscape smaller than Los Angeles or New York, but there are several large local media here as well as agencies strong in Scottsdale downtown. And like you guys were mentioning, the call center thing, that's really big out here. Call centers are popular in Arizona. So Flex Bus goes from Vegas to Tempe. Okay. What's up, Fulton Hill 804? Thanks for the chat. What's up, Tupac Shakur? Strong Calm with Aaron Dunn. Just learning microgreens will be indoor, but curious about what could grow outdoors. So in the summertime, actually the best crop out here from my experience year round is going to be citrus, lemon, lime, orange. I've tried to grow bananas out here, not very successful at growing bananas. It can be done. I've tried to grow mango out here. I have a mango tree still. It didn't really like the extreme heat. I tried to put it in some shade, and now I have to deal with the extreme cold that's coming up with the mango. So tropicals, I don't know. Dragon fruit. That's usually a popular one. I mean, people like to eat these dragon fruits. That one didn't like the winter either. So when it gets, like today's been overcast. Yesterday was all rain. It's raining right now. That means the cold weather is coming in. We get hit with cold snaps in December, January, and February. And those cold snaps, they'll usually hit us and throw us off, and your tropicals will die. And my tomatoes died last year. So did my bell peppers. The only things that didn't die were the broccoli. So winter crops, broccoli, you can grow the heck out of that. Artichoke, grow the heck out of that. Cauliflower, it'll grow. Squash, I grew a ton of squash and zucchini in the spring. That was probably an abundant crop. Another one that does pretty good is eggplant. I've grown a lot of eggplant outside. These are ones that I've had success with, like crops galore. Carrots, I've grown a lot of carrots. Carrots will grow here. Garlic, ginger, onion. You can grow some onions out here. Potatoes, they'll grow. I mean, most of it will grow. You just have to kind of create these, what they call microclimates. Okay, so Island B, railroad infrastructure was developed by the steel and oil tycoons who were a privatized business. America would be far better off if antitrust laws halted those innovations. You mean if it didn't? Okay, so yeah, antitrust laws are, I think they're important because I've seen big business. I've seen big business really crush competition. Even my college professor, he was funny. I remember he even said, he's like, when you get too big, what happens is these big powerhouse corporations, they come in and they check you. Yeah, it's kind of like they throw a warning shot across your bow. So let's just say you're a builder and you're trying to compete with the big builder in the area. Name any one of them. You start to emerge. It's kind of like the story with Nike, Phil Knight, Shoe Dog. Like he was saying, Adidas and Puma were trying to stop Nike in its tracks when they were getting too big because they were emerging. So these big corporations come in, they try to basically overtake them, overpower them to either get them to sell or to force them into a legal bind. But they've done that to builders. My college professor was saying that once you get to a certain size, they come in and they kind of check you and they say, what's going on here? They might send you a notice saying you're stomping on their territory or something like that. And it can slow down the up and coming, more fit for the environment company. But you've got these big oligarch kind of corporations that are in place. And antitrust laws, I think, in my opinion, can be healthy for the small business that's trying to come up that could be threatened by these big corporations. And then you might say, well, if you're such a young stud and such an up-and-coming corporation, you can take the heat from the establishment. But sometimes these establishments hire some very powerful lawyers and also, I don't know. I'm trying to follow you on that one. So you're saying that antitrust laws do not protect the small business and they're good for the economy. It's hard to communicate over a text, I know. Aaron Dunn, I understand that LA and New York are the largest media markets, but small business often needs marketing help. Appreciate the insight, Scott. So Yeah, I mean, when it comes to small business marketing, what kind of services are you trying to offer? Are you offering Facebook marketing? Are you offering Instagram marketing, YouTube marketing, or Google search marketing, Google AdWords? What kind of marketing are you offering? Because some digital stuff works and some doesn't. And some of it can be a waste of money. And then what ends up happening is these small businesses are like, oh, I already tried Facebook. I've already thrown a couple $1,000s at it and I got like zero return on it, zero ROI. So then they don't want to invest in it anymore. Alan David, it's raining and cold here in Los Angeles. Heat is on. Yeah. I mean, what's the temperature right now here in Arizona? Let me see this. It is chilly. It's been a nice day. I mean, it's, let's see, 61 right now in Phoenix. How cold is it in LA? All right. Social media and podcasting. Yeah, podcasting is, how do you get people to tune into podcasts? I've thought about doing this for podcasting, something like this, but it seems like you have to kind of like use YouTube to tell people. So you got to use your YouTube audience to let people know that you're also on a podcast that they can download on their phone. I mean, but it seems like podcasting is kind of a difficult one unless you're famous or niche specific. Darren Croc, you can't make real money on podcasting. Island B, what you're saying sounds like government intervention, where the big builder has a deal with the jurisdiction to squeeze out the small builders. Well, no, it doesn't just happen with the builders. I mean, even in Shoe Dog with Nike, Phil Knight, I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's from Oregon, founder of Nike. He was saying that, one of the core mottos of Nike before they were a corporation was not to do business like the establishment. They just wanted to do things different. They didn't want to take it public, and they didn't like how Adidas and Puma had the market share, and some of these other companies had the market share, like Head. And so they wanted to do things different, but they kept getting warning shots fired over their bow. Like when they were at the Mexico City Olympics, they rolled out the Cortez, or the, some of the shoes they rolled out, and they kept getting like people trying to throw them off the road. They kept ending up in court for lawsuits and stuff like that. And, it was because they were stepping on people's territory. And, I don't know if it's government intervention. I'm not for big government, but in this case, antitrust laws have a utility, in my opinion. Strong Calm says, leveraging your current audience, yes. Also, video clipping consistency is key. Yeah, consistency is key. Scott says, Darren, if you are comparing salary range to cities with the same density as Phoenix throughout the country, you will find the pay comparable, the data out there for you to see. Darren Croc says, how is density relative to pay? I don't know. I mean, if you're doing digital marketing, your local population doesn't really apply. In this case, it's a local living in Arizona, for example. I'm Arizona related. But if I was talking politics or if I was talking sports, let's just say I have a choice. I could do NFL only, or I could do all sports, NBA, basketball. That means I'm year round. MLB, I could do it all. Or if it's politics, I can do it year round, but it's going to really heat up when we get closer to the primaries and the elections. But so nationwide in that case, but local politics or a local channel like this, I guess population density would play a factor. But if you're going for nationwide because you're digital, because everyone's at the tip of your fingertips, you can really tap into that. Sean David Meister, how about grapefruit? My grapefruit tree did not make it. I have to retry with grapefruit. But lime, lemon, and orange, every time it works. Every time. I mean, it's almost impossible to fail with citrus trees. But grapefruit, I did not succeed with that. But I had to move it. So maybe when I moved it shocked the tree. It's usually best once you put it in the ground, make sure it can stay for a while and establish. Because if you keep moving it around like I did, every 4 months or 5 months, there was a point in time where my grapefruit tree was my best tree in my yard. But once it got hot, the grapefruit tree just did not hold on. Okay, Strong Calm says, if you're looking to make quick money on podcasts, you don't fully understand the power of a podcast strategy. It takes time. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple podcasts out there like Impulsive. There's H3H3. Mike Tyson has a podcast. Dennis Rodman has a podcast. And I'm sure they've got sponsors. You can run a podcast from Apple Store. You can run a podcast from YouTube even. I mean, most of these guys like Impulsive, Logan Paul, he's on YouTube. So he must just be making YouTube ad revenue. He doesn't really, I mean, the only thing he promotes on there is his clothing company, Maverick. I don't even think he does too many endorsements. Okay, back to the antitrust talk. Antitrust laws are basically anti-free market tools where it psychs out big successful businesses like Amazon to move offshore and enrich foreign lands. Well, that's true too. I mean, Bernie Sanders has been ranting, going on and on about how Amazon and Netflix didn't pay any corporation tax. He said, hey, did you know that anyone who paid at least $1 into the tax system last year paid more than Amazon and Netflix, the richest companies, some of the richest companies in America. And the problem is that this is why I said we just need to go to a flat tax. Trying to tax the rich doesn't work because we just need a 10% flat tax across the board, whether you make 30,000 or 300 million, 10%. Because if you try to overtax the rich, they're going to go to Singapore or the Cayman Islands or Hong Kong, and they're just going to move their corporation, and then Hong Kong, Singapore gets the 10% tax that America should be getting. So I'd rather get 10% of the 300 million than zero because they went offshore. Did you know that Google, Facebook, they're offshore? They're in Ireland. So, like, if you look at the headquarters, yeah, it says Menlo Park, but then you find out Facebook's paying a lot of taxes to Ireland because they have a better tax rate than the United States. And you're like, wow, so we don't. So even if Ocasio-Cortez got her way, was able to tax the rich are just going to go offshore with their money. So he does have a point there. So that's something to consider. So there is a side effect to everything. But when it comes to big tech, you can't tell me that you don't wish that there would be more competition, even for phones. I mean, with the way that Apple has gone to, Apple went from $700 a phone, $750 to $800 for a phone, to $1,500 in one. That means they doubled the price in 1 year. And there was no checks and balance on that. They were just able to do it. And we're talking about a company, Apple, who ever since Steve Jobs left has not really innovated. Yes, I'm using an Apple computer now, and I'm using an Apple phone, but that's all Jobs. That's what Steve Jobs brought to the table. Apple has not really brought any new innovations, like the iWatch or Apple Watch. Does that impress me? No. I mean, I have to charge it every day. I don't know. But where's the innovation? Well, it's with some 19, 20-year-old, 30-year-old kid who's hungry, who Apple's trying to cut a deal with, who hasn't cut the deal with to get the innovation. But he's not hungry because he's working for Apple. But if he was working for himself, he would be like Steve Jobs. And Apple, they really haven't innovated anything, but their prices keep going up. I mean, when Apple rolls out a new phone, it's like, hey, we have a better camera. Great. So does the Android. Apple rolls out another one. They're like, hey, we've got more storage space. Well, it doesn't take much to upgrade storage space. In fact, the whole time they should have just been giving us 264 gigabytes anyways. But you're paying for that as a premium. What else are you paying for? The operating system? What's the operating system got that it didn't have when Steve Jobs was alive? So, I mean, but they've got so much money that they literally just invest in their own stock. So they're not even really doing too much for the U.S. economy, are they? I mean, they still have a factory in China. I'd love for someone to bring that up. So do you think companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon should be broken up by way of antitrust laws? It's not that they should be broken up. I think they do good things for the economy. It's that what happens is they become like a vacuum and they keep sucking up everything else around them. So anytime a new technology comes out, they just buy them out. So when they buy them out, that company just gets sucked into the vortex. So you never get to see the next Apple, the next Amazon, the next? I mean, when was the last? What's outside of Uber? Okay, what's the last startup that you've seen emerge? I mean, we don't see any. I mean, give me a couple startups that are the next. I mean, when was Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft founded? In the 80s and the 90s? What's the new era Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft? Where are they? Facebook? Facebook is early 2000s anyway, but in the last 10 years, have you seen anything that's coming? Lyft. Right. Okay, Uber and Lyft, rideshare companies. Yeah. I'll concede to that. Google was, when was Google? 2003 when they IPO'd? I mean, they're almost as old as Alibaba. Is Alibaba an American company? Isn't Jack Ma the richest man in China? I don't think Alibaba is an American company. Well, then they're not good for the economy. The economy needs balance, diversity, not monopolies. That's what we're trying to say. Thank you, Third Power Prod. I'm just saying, WeWork. You think WeWork's got a future? Last I heard, WeWork was upside down, and so is Uber. I mean, I think Uber's very influential. I know a lot of people who ride Uber, including myself, but Uber's not very profitable. There are a couple companies that you could probably add into that list. There's been one that had a real nice surge in the stock market. What was it called? Beyond Meat. We saw Beyond Meat really surge. But in terms of tech, the tech market's already it's like if IBM had the power, the IBM or any of the Intel, those corporations were before Google came, before Amazon came. You know, these tech companies, because Amazon's not just a online e-commerce venue. It's also a technology company. I mean, and Jeff Bezos, he's a technology guru himself. He kind of competes with everyone. He's getting into, the grocery department. He wants to get into he wants to affect Walmart, and then he wants to compete with Elon Musk. So, I mean, he's pretty interesting. Okay, so Darren Kroc says StubHub. Is StubHub really that innovative on the level of a Google or a Microsoft? I don't see StubHub being, I don't know. Intel's biggest competitor has been AMD. Bitcoin. Well, look at what they're trying to do to Bitcoin and blockchain. I mean, granted, there's been a lot of talk and not a lot of action in the blockchain space and cryptocurrency and whatnot. But there is some progress that's taking place with cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. All right, we have 25 people who crushed up the likes, 38 people watching, and we're having a conversation about technology and tech companies and growing into industry. Central banks are the monopoly. Okay. They're above it all. I mean, you can't even really touch banks. Banks are the untouchables. And it was crazy. I was like watching these guys that were doing like some serious construction work. And I was thinking about, I was like, man, these guys do a lot of work like that. Yeah, when you're like wheeling wheelbarrows and you're like busting your knuckles and you're like out there, it's 110 degrees. You got sweat just dripping off your forehead. You wake up at 5, you get off work at 4, and you go home. You're so tired, you repeat the next day, and you do that 5 to 6 days a week, right? And I was thinking about, I was like, man, these guys make like $20 an hour. And I was like, but there's bankers out there who are like billionaires and millionaires, and they don't do really anything. And I was like, that's kind of weird. I was like, the people who work the hardest make the least. And it's all done under this idea, well, I'm so sophisticated and so intelligent that I deserve to make billions of dollars, and you deserve to make $20 an hour. But you ever watch a billionaire try to build a house with his hands? Good luck, dude. But he just so happens to be really good at tinkering the switches on the modern money mechanics and being a good central banker. Well, yeah, central banks, they're threatened by Bitcoin and crypto, but I'd have to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure that they already own Bitcoin by now. I mean, if you look at who controls Bitcoin anymore, it's actually the same people who control the central banks. So it doesn't, the apple hasn't fallen too far away from the tree. But I support Bitcoin because it's a financial technology upgrade. But the whole idea that it takes the power away from the central banks, Nah, man, these guys, they already own a chunk of it. Zeus the Truth, where do you think Blockbuster would be hadn't they gone out? Blockbuster, I mean, they would have to be, yeah, I mean, Netflix came in and just stole their thunder. But even Netflix needs competition, but who is it? It's Amazon. It's Hulu. Who owns Hulu? So it's, again, large corporations buying out the stake. It's like, do you know how many corporations Time Warner owns? Like, you ever just do a quick research and you're like, who owns CNN? Who owns CNN? Well, CNN owns it. Or is it Ted Turner? Oh, no, wait. Ted Turner doesn't own it anymore because he sold out. Well, who did he sell out to? And then you start to realize who runs the entire media complex in the United States is like 2 or 3 companies, and it just so happens to be Time Warner. Now, if you ever get Time Warner Cable, Time Warner also owns and controls who? Does Time Warner own Disney? So it's, but you didn't know that because you were just like, well, CNN owns CNN. And then you were like, no, wait, it's founded by Ted Turner. Oh, wait, Ted Turner sold out to who? Oh, AT&T and Time Warner. So again, this is a big corporation who really controls everything. But I don't know, is it bad or is it good? It's like a corporate government that is the root foundation. And is that good or is that bad? I don't know. I guess it depends on how corrupt the leadership is and how comfortable they are in the position they are. Is the media corrupt? Because who's their overlords? Who's controlling them? So, man, Time Warner probably does, man. They probably do. Time Warner owns pretty much. I like, who owns YouTube? Okay, they say Google. Okay, but Google's its own whole other powerful entity. Actually, I kind of like Google. I think of all of the big tech corporations, Google is the one that I like the most. I mean, they're not perfect, okay, but in terms of, if you compare, I mean, it would probably have to go. Number 1 is Google, and a lot of people don't like Google. I personally think they're okay. I honestly think Google's okay, even though I've heard quite a bit of different things. Number 2 would be Amazon. Number 3 would be like probably Microsoft. Number 4 would be Facebook. I think Facebook, I'm glad they got out of the cryptocurrency with Libra because they've just proven that they're not the friendliest corporation. They're not the friendliest company. No, they're not. So in terms of big tech, Facebook, the reason Facebook needs to be more friendly to the people. They could turn the corner, but Google, Big G is the one that I like the most. Google is Skynet. You've been warned. I don't know what that means. Yeah, Google does. I mean, they're really powerful. Let's see here. So anyways, we've gone over a lot in this podcast here, this live stream. And is there anything else you guys would like to talk about before we wrap this up? Thank you to the 30 people who crushed up the likes, 35 people. So now you know, Google's my favorite. I like Google. I'm not a big fan of Facebook. I'd like to see Facebook turn the corner and do a lot better, but I'm not holding my breath because I don't know if it's Zuck. I don't know who it is, but they just don't seem like very friendly. I know a lot of people who've invested money in Google and gotten ROI, return on investment. I know a lot of people who invested money in Facebook and got hosed completely. Like people who invested in the whole dream of building a Facebook page or doing Facebook ads and like didn't make much money with it. But people who've invested, spent their advertising dollars on Google, they did get return on investment. Not everybody, because not everybody's got a great product or a great marketing campaign, but that's just my opinion. Oh yeah, I mean, so does Amazon. I mean, look at Alexa. I mean, they're doing the same thing with Alexa. I mean, it's the whole Libra failure proves that Facebook isn't that powerful, right? Yet he's still on. I mean, Zuck's like 35. He's only. I mean, there's just a couple baby boomers who don't agree with him, but once those baby boomers are out of the way, or that generation that's over 70. There's some people in the over 70 age bracket that don't really like Zuck. But once they're gone and out of his way, and he's 40, 50 years old, he's going to have his way, especially if he stays that powerful. It's just he's going through his growing pains. Remember in the 90s when Bill Gates went to Capitol Hill and got grilled for his antitrust violations, Microsoft being a monopoly, and he actually helped jumpstart Apple back into business. Do you guys remember that in the 90s when Bill Gates helped revive Apple when Apple was all but gone after they fired Steve Jobs? That's what Zuckerberg is going through right now, what Gates went through. People move away from Facebook. Facebook makes some changes. They come back. People don't always stay away from things. I don't see Facebook going the same direction as MySpace. Do you? I mean, it's Facebook's going to be like a household name for a few more years, at least another decade. Oh, Verizon. Yeah, who owns Verizon? Do you know who owns Verizon? Watch this. Who owns Verizon? Verizon Communications. Let's see. I think Verizon is obviously it's a publicly traded company, so it must own itself, right? So Yahoo acquired Verizon. So Yahoo owns Verizon? Okay, let's see who the parent company of Verizon is. Trade name Verizon Wireless. Headquarters is in Banking Ridge, New Jersey. Owner, Verizon Communications. So let's see who Verizon Communications owns. Okay, so Verizon owns AOL. It owns cable TV, landline, mobile phone, broadband, digital television, IPTV, digital media, internet, telematics. They own a lot more than they're telling us here. But the point is, these large corporations, they own a lot. Anyway. And if you're a small business guy, I guess in a way, your dream could be, right at first, it's like they're your competition. But then they come in and they're like, hey, look, we see you're doing great. You're great. Let me give you this pretty penny and it can be yours. We'll let you just kind of like retire and go away, but you need to give me what you created. Here's a pretty penny. And then some guys are like, nope, not happening. I ain't selling out. And then they're like, oh, really? Well, they call their lawyer and they're like, we'll see you over there, kind of thing. You know, that's big. That's kind of what happened. Some way, somehow, Facebook managed to avoid all that. I think Yahoo offered to buy Facebook. They didn't have to sell. They tried to get him to break, but Zuckerberg signed up with someone who protected him. I don't know who it was, but he signed up with someone and they protected him, and he was able to build his own empire. Uber, I think Google tried to buy Uber, but then they created Waymo. So it's kind of interesting how these big corporations try to become like a vacuum and suck up all the competition, and it just makes them bigger. You know, they just like Amazon bought Alexa. I mean, hey, Jeff, Facebook Marketplace has destroyed Craigslist. There you go. I mean, good old Craigslist. I think Craigslist kind of in a way destroyed itself also in some ways. I mean, the technology upgrade for Craigslist, I think where Craigslist went wrong. I mean, I know they created an app, but he was really content with the way that desktop, it's like the Drudge Report. Like Drudge Report used to be is Drudge Report still as popular, but Drudge refuses to upgrade his website. His website looks the exact same, almost the exact same as it did in the 90s. Craigslist looks almost the exact same as it did in the early 2000s. Does Drudge have an app? Does Drudge have, but I don't really hear too much about Drudge outside of when Trump's trying to use him to say, oh, number one conservative news pundit, Drudge Report featured me here. And then he gets a lot of publicity and people start going back to Drudge. But I don't think Drudge is what it used to be. Do a lot of people use Drudge Report? Oh, I didn't say nothing wrong with being selling out for $1 billion, but that's what happens to the competition is they get bought out. So, and then they just become fat and happy. So, I mean, anyone can become fat and happy, but they'll just slow down. Not everyone's going to be as hungry as Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs all the way into their 50s and 60s. But I mean, when you have hungry guys, even Bill Gates, I'd say even Zuckerberg's pretty hungry. I mean, he's a go-getter. Elon Musk, look how many companies Elon Musk was juggling at one time. Tesla, I mean, after he did PayPal, he does Tesla, Solar City, and SpaceX. SpaceX and Tesla alone are the big boys. And I think Solar City kind of just merged into Tesla now because Tesla batteries and all that on the homes, but it's still interesting. Craigslist UI is trash. Well, I mean, the user interface is, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's great for people who grew up on Craigslist and that's all they want. They don't want to have to, like my grandpa, for example, he hates when they do a software update because they'll change things around, like going from Windows 8 to Windows XP or whatever they do, Windows 7 to Windows 8. That's like a big headache for old timers. They hate that software upgrade because things are no longer in the same place. And so when a website over changes everything, it scares people away because then they got to relearn where everything's at. And so Craigslist and even Reddit too, or Drudge Report, they stuck to that idea that like, let's stay the exact same thing because if it's not broke, don't fix it. But in doing that, they also don't bring in anyone new. So they're really just catering to the people who have been loyal to them and used their service for a long time. But just like a good song, it gets old after a while and they find new pastures. So that's kind of like what happened to Craigslist is they didn't really change, but also a lot of legal stuff because Craigslist was fueled by a lot of things that kept people there. You know what I'm talking about. So when they got rid of that, people stopped going to Craigslist. Tesla is also a good investment. Solar roofs will be the norm very shortly. Yeah, Tesla is good for many reasons, although I don't think it's profitable. Is Tesla even profitable by any, even close to being profitable? I don't think so. Facebook has a lot of competition, Twitter, WeChat. So WeChat, do you know anyone in the United States using WeChat? WeChat is popular in China. Like if you go to Singapore, people don't really use WeChat. They use this one called Line and they use WhatsApp. But WeChat is only really popular from my experience in China. It's not like even Europe, they use WhatsApp. Like that's the big one is WhatsApp. And who owns that? Facebook. As far as Twitter goes, man, I'd rather invest in TikTok. Like today, I've downloaded TikTok. That's the one I'm big on is TikTok. WhatsApp is the Latin American gold standard. Yeah, and who owns it? Seriously. Yeah, I mean, who owns WhatsApp? Facebook. What you think WhatsApp is dead in the United States? There's a couple. What chat do most people use in the United States? I think they use texting, obviously, but what is the big one that everyone's using? Probably Messenger, WhatsApp, both Facebook products. Then you have Instagram. Some people use that. I mean, I don't know. Facebook's becoming the new Google. They're sucking up all the competition. They do Facebook dating. I mean, they're going to put out all the dating sites out of business. And all it takes is one good reason for someone to create a Facebook account, and people that have deleted their Facebook account 20, 30 years or 10 years ago will come back. And that's Facebook being more friendly and welcoming people back. But Facebook has that tendency to dangle the carrot. Like, oh yeah, come on over. We're friendly. We're still your friend. And they dangle the carrot and then they go for it. And you realize the carrot's never achievable because Facebook's always baiting people into doing things without giving anything. Literally. If you're a business owner, try and build a business on Facebook. Good luck. You can do that on Google. You can do that on Amazon. Can you do it on Facebook? No. So therefore, they're not an economic friendly platform. Instagram DMs, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Instagram DMs is like a messenger app now. More people in the United States probably use that than they do WhatsApp. Craig says Facebook is killing it with new services. What's the new service that they're killing it with? The dating thing? I haven't even used that, but I heard about it. Jeff, who would you rather pay for your high-speed rail? You out of your own property taxes or an enterprise with deep pockets that can fund it with investors 100%? Oh, wow. Probably me. I mean, I'd rather taxpayer dollars go to it. I'm open to either one, but both of those can have, you know, I mean, I'd rather just they build it. I mean, we're at that point. It's got to get built. You're talking about high speed rail? Yeah, high speed rail. I'm at the point where we got to build it, and they got to find a way to fund it and build it. And I know what you're saying. The private sector builds things a little bit more efficiently. It depends on who the company is that gets the contract. Is it Elon Musk building it with Hyperloop? Let him build it. Is it Richard Branson with Virgin building it? Let them build it. Is it a company from Japan who's got experience building high-speed rails just as good as they have? What is that? Shikusa? What's the name of the high-speed rail in Japan? High-speed rail in Japan. It has a name. The Shinkansen. Shinkansen. If you haven't looked it up, Shinkansen. That sucker is. I mean, if the people who built the Shinkansen bullet train were the ones who got the contract, that thing goes 150 to 200 miles an hour. If it was a German company, say the guys who built the one in high-speed rail in Italy, that one's pretty good. High-speed rail called Frecciarossa Red Arrow, serves major cities, top speed of 360 kilometers per hour. That train is I've ridden that train. It goes from Naples all the way to Milan. It's fast and it's efficient. I mean, you can get from Rome to Florence in 2 hours on that train. Rome to Florence is probably further away than Phoenix to Tucson. Actually, it is. And it's 43 euros to ride it. Would you pay? I mean, 43 euros is probably about $50. So would you pay $50 to go high-speed rail from Phoenix to Tucson? I mean, that might be a little bit more than gas. I don't know. Naples to Milan, that's a pretty far trek. You can do that for 95 euros. But if that company who built the high-speed rail in Europe were to offer to build it, I'd say, yeah, let them build it as a private company. Private enterprise. High-speed rail in Arizona will never happen. Come on, says Darren. Why you don't think so? Tell me, Darren. Give me a good reason. Arizona is an empty desert. It will never have high-speed rail. But government knows best how to waste money, especially through red tape. Look, outside of antitrust laws having a utility, you have to have checks and balances. I mean, but that's like saying, like, okay, because you don't believe in big government, you also don't think we need a public, a unified police department. I didn't say that. Just because I don't believe in big government, did I say I want to do away with public school education for inner city children? No, I didn't say that. I'm saying what we're saying is some things require public funding, and then other things, too much of anything, too little of anything. It's like food. If you don't eat enough, you're going to be malnourished. If you eat too much, you're going to be fat, slow, and sluggish. So, I mean, it's a balance, right? And I know that's cliche. I'm not trying to sound like a typical new age millennial here, but that's what I'm saying with government. Too much government's no good. Not enough government's no good. I mean, if you're talking like the Wild West here, I mean, you're going to have Wild West type things where you're going to have scammers and you're going to have hackers and you're going to have outlaws, taking advantage of granny. So you got to have checks and balances. Taxpayer funded airports versus private funded airports. Private funded airports are lavish. Best airports in the world are private funded. Hey, Craig, can you give me some? I'm not disputing what you said, but can you give me examples of some private airports that we might think are public, but they're actually private? That are, I mean, the best airport I've ever been to is Singapore. The second best airport I've ever been to was probably Dubai or Hong Kong. I know they built a beauty in Beijing. It just opened, a beautiful airport just opened in Beijing. The best American airport that we have is Phoenix Sky Harbor. Is Phoenix Sky Harbor public or private? Let me check this. Phoenix Sky Harbor, private. Says a civic military public airport, 3 miles east of downtown Phoenix. So it's a public. But if you have some private examples, let's see here. Craig said that. USA has mostly been public. Okay, but what's an example of a private airport that's better than the best ones around? I'm not. If you don't know, that's okay. I'm just asking if you know off the top. Zeus the truth. It wouldn't even cost 50 in gas money to get from Orlando to Miami. Okay. $25 would be more reasonable. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So let's just say you're a guest, you're visiting Orlando. If you're visiting Orlando or Miami, you also have to factor in a rental car, because if you don't live there, where are you going to, so it's what's the rental car cost you to drive? So you've got to take into consideration, if you're a family of 4, is it more affordable to land in Miami, rent a car, drive around Miami, and then take the train or drive up to Orlando and do all that and have a car, pay for parking at Disney, pay for parking at Universal, or take public transportation the whole time, do Uber? If you're Ubering, family of 4 from the hotel to Disney, you're staying in Disney Studios area, around the recreational area. But it costs $15 to go from, the Sheraton or the Hilton right around the Disney Springs Resort to get to Disney World. Family of 4 in an Uber, $15 each way. That's $30. Parking at Disney, $30. So that's a wash. So, how much is the rental car? How much is the convenience? All this and that. So, there's certain things that we'd have to really take into consideration if we're talking it. Craig said Singapore is best in the world. Yes, Singapore is best in the world. Yeah. You know why? Because a lot of big money from the United States set up shop to avoid paying taxes to the United States. So they set up Singapore as kind of like an outpost, became a financial epicenter, a little island at the tip of the Malaysian peninsula on the Straits of Malacca, became this big booming metropolis over 50, 60 years. And a lot of it is funded by American dollars. Now it's on its own. It's fully autonomous. It's not even semi-autonomous. Semi-autonomous is like Hong Kong, which China is trying to take over. Macau, I'm surprised Macau's not in the mix, but I'd imagine if Hong Kong fell, so too would Macau. Another autonomous nation state is Taiwan. Taiwan's an autonomous nation state, but mostly speaking Mandarin and of Han Chinese descent. Don't rent cars from airport too high in price. Yeah, I've rented a car just to do the PNG, Pacific Northwest. Landed in Portland. Said, I want to take this car from Portland to San Diego. Well, I got charged a big surcharge just for the car rental, not even including the gas, okay? But I think they ended up charging me like $850 to take it from an enterprise in Portland to an enterprise down in San Diego. Charged me $850 because of the drop-off fee at a further away destination. So, the only way a rental car really works is if you pick up and drop off from the same place. Otherwise, they're slapping a big tax on you for dropping off at a further away location, which doesn't make sense because it's all in the family, right? It's enterprise to enterprise. Who owns Enterprise? The people who own Enterprise get it back. The people who own Hertz, they get it back. The people who own Alamo. But, man, I'm not complaining about it, actually. I think I can see why they do it. I actually thought that sometimes they don't do that, though, and I was surprised they didn't. I've rented a car in Hawaii for $35 a day. Hawaii is a place where I expect rental cars to be the price that the Portland. That was for 7 days, so it was over $100 a day to rent that car. And then, so it was surprising because in Hawaii, I was renting cars for $35 a day from Enterprise. Jeff, quite frankly, I'm surprised you as a Bitcoin supporter would rather have a centralized public funded high-speed rail by taxpayers, especially when many taxpayers who'd rather drive don't utilize it. Yeah. Okay. So you're surprised. I mean, is that like an underhanded jab? You're like, oh, well, shame on you, Jeff. You shameful individual supporting Bitcoin but loving. No, it's and again, if you flash back on what I said if it's Richard Branson building it, keep it private. If it's Elon Musk building it, private. If it's the guys who built the Shinkansen in Japan building it, keep it private. But if it's, and even when I say that, I cringe a little bit because I know how the government goes over budget with it. But some of the best rail systems I've ever ridden on, China, high-speed rail system I've ever ridden on was in China. And isn't that built by the Chinese government? Now I would be saying, oh, the Chinese government's more efficient than the United States. Shame on you, Jeff. How dare you say such a thing? Blasphemy. No, who owns the Chinese rail system? So, I mean, you can't be too far. And what's logical? What's going to make the most sense? I mean, what's the plan? Who owns the Chinese high-speed rail system? HSR building boom continues with the high-speed rail network set to reach almost all high-speed rail trains tracked and owned and operated by the China Railway Corporation under the brand China Railway High Speed. Is the China high-speed rail system privately owned? Oh, man. Obviously, they've taken a page out of the United States government. I mean, it's like Amtrak. Did you know Amtrak is mostly funded by the U.S. government? But you wouldn't know that because I thought it was called Amtrak. I mean, no, you just said you'd rather have it publicly funded and most rail systems are privatized. No, if you flash back to what I exactly said, I said it depends. It depends if it's going to be Richard Branson who builds it, or is it going to be Elon Musk, or it just depends. It could be publicly. It could be public funds that pay for it. That was my initial answer. But then when I thought about it, I mean, just because I give a off the top answer without premeditation thought going into it doesn't mean that's my final answer. It's like, that's why people say sleep on it. I don't have an exact answer when you're going a cappella with me on a live stream, but sometimes in some cases, the argument for a publicly funded rail system could work. In some cases, a privately funded rail system could also work. So I don't have the statistics. I don't have the details in front of me. It depends on what the plan is. And most plans, it takes a presentation. You got to read the white paper, right? I mean, and like I said, with Bitcoin, I've seen even in cryptocurrency, if you want to use that as the centralized versus decentralized, so the exchanges that have been hacked in crypto were decentralized exchanges that you thought were so good. But what ended up happening was scammers were using that as safe havens to go ahead and take people's cryptocurrency away from them. And it was like, oh, no one owns it. We got hacked. But it ended up in someone's hands, but it was the hackers. So it's like, whereas like something like Binance or Coinbase seem to be a safe place for custody, even though they charge a lot of fees, in particular Coinbase. So it's kind of like you have to really take things into consideration. I can't give an answer like right away. I mean, as to whether or not centralization or decentralization is going to be the best, because I've seen it both ways, where both have positives and negatives associated. Thank you, Robert. Craig says a governor needs to support it or it won't get done. Yeah. Hey, but if there was a governor, Governor Doug Ducey in Arizona is, in my opinion, a pretty good governor. I actually like his energy. I like his presentation. I like the way I just like Doug Ducey. I think he's a good governor. he's a motivator. He's an optimist too. I'm not big on like complainers and pessimists. And Doug Ducey's definitely, in my opinion, an optimist. He's always highlighting the best. And now, obviously, there is a difference. You can be too overly optimistic. It's like there's a Category 5 hurricane coming, and you've got your house, and it's like built on stilts, and it can up it can withstand 150 mile an hour winds. But Cat 5s, they come with a lot faster wind than that, and tidal surges. And you're just like, oh, I'm just going to weather this out. I'm just going to stay here and wait for this Cat 5 to show up, and then everything's going to be okay. And then when you're in the storm, you're like, oh no. So I mean, I'm not so sure that he's overly optimistic, but he's definitely optimistic, and I like that. Scott Glick, Darren, AZ will not be growing much longer. Somebody get this. What did Darren say? I don't care what Google says. What they say doesn't mean it's true. Okay. Darren says, have you lived anywhere else? Scott has already said he lived in California. Hey, Jeff, weren't you criticizing Amtrak's service in your last video? Yes, I was. And yeah, I mean, that's what I'm trying to say is I've seen, I see what you're saying. I mean, that's like saying, should the city of Texas build, or should the city of Dallas build the Jones Mahal, or should who owns the Jones Mahal? We're talking about Texas Stadium, right? It's kind of like who built the Arizona Cardinals Stadium back when it was called State Farm, or it was called State Farm Stadium, or now it's called State Farm. It used to be called University of Phoenix, but that was tax dollars. Who built Bank One Ballpark before it was called Chase? Tax dollars. So in Arizona, we're used to paying for things. We're used to having a tax on things to build beautiful things. And at the time when Bank One Ballpark rolled out, Chase Field, where the Diamondbacks play, that was the state-of-the-art thing back in 1995 or 96 when it first came out. Bank One Ballpark was it. I mean, that was a state-of-the-art stadium. I think there was only maybe one or two that had a retractable roof and all that. And then when the Cardinals rolled out with their stadium, which was also paid for by taxpayers' dollars, before it was Chase, it was America West Arena. Taxpayers' dollars funded America West Arena for the Suns to play. America West Arena is now 25 years old? They got to replace it. I mean, it's over 25 years old. They got to replace it. And, it's going to come up. So, I mean, we've seen some beautiful things paid for with tax dollars here in Phoenix that built some of the state-of-the-art things. It's just we haven't done it for the last 10 years. General Lee, do they always take a credit report when renting a basement, suite, or apartment? Yes. I have yet, unless it's like, I don't know of a single place in well, it depends. I mean, are you trying to move to Indian School in 25th Avenue? But Third Power Prod, who are you talking to? Let's see here. Darren Croc, if Talking Stick Resort Arena is not updated, the Suns will leave. No, the Suns will not leave. That guy that owns the Suns, Robert Sarver, he has reigned over the Suns in an era of absolute. I mean, where's he going to move? Las Vegas or Albuquerque? They're going to build the new Suns stadium or Suns Arena. It's actually Phoenix Suns used to be the darlings of Phoenix a long time ago. I mean, back in the 90s when Charles Barkley, Dan Marley, Kevin Johnson, even when Nash was here in 2008, 2009, or 2007, 2006, the Suns were the darlings of Arizona. Then Colangelo sold to Robert Sarver, and Robert Sarver has done an absolutely terrible job owning the Suns. And people who used to be diehard Suns fans, season ticket holders, just they got sick of it and they gave up. It was kind of like when the Cardinals used, back when they finally got Jake the Snake and he took us to the playoffs to play the Cowboys and we won 19-0. And then, that was like we broke even. We were 500. And then we didn't have anything going on. We drafted Matt Leinart in the first round, and then here comes big Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner put the Cardinals on the map. But that was that. Oh my gosh. Have you heard North Dakota is really growing? Lots of people from Cali buying and renting out farms there. Okay. They can go to North Dakota. They Californians can have North Dakota for all I care. Take it. Good for them. I'm glad. Go to North Dakota, please. I mean, what please go there. Did you hear Kanye West moved to Wyoming? Thoughts? Oh yeah. Kanye West has like what 3,000 acres in Wyoming. I think that's a good thing. I think Kanye's had an awakening. He's pretty aware of what's. I don't know. I mean, he's so unstable in a lot of ways too. Like I'm worried. Like 1 year ago, Kanye West comes out with a song with Lil Pump. You know, you guys seen that Lil Pump song with Kanye? And then he's talking about, doing all these different girls. And then a year later, he comes out with this song and he's like talking about how premarital sex is bad and all this and that and how you need to wait till marriage. And it's like, if you just flash back 1 year on Kanye with Lil Pump, he's talking about all this crazy stuff in the song. Now he's like, Jesus is king. So I'm like, I mean, I've been around bipolar people where they have manic episodes and then they have these depressed moments. And Kanye has had that. Now, I hope he doesn't have to deal with that anymore. I hope he's, healed by Jesus. I hope all that's good. But I don't know. It takes a couple years to really, for me to be convinced of that. But anytime you can live out in Wyoming's a beautiful place. See, South Dakota doesn't have what they have in Wyoming. Wyoming has the Tetons, Jackson Hole, and all that. Obviously, if you go east of the Tetons, it's flat, Casper, Cody, all that. General Lee, I'm moving to Phoenix from Canada. I have a credit report from here, but rentals are not added to our reports. Will I have issues renting? I don't know. Try. I don't know. I haven't tried to move from Canada to here, but you should be okay. Island B says, Jeff, as much as I love professional sports, I'm totally against funding multi-billion-dollar sports venues. Yeah, I mean, the city was back in the 90s. Phoenix used to. It was pretty easy to pass a legislation that would get them to build Bank One Ballpark at the time, now called Chase Field, America West Arena, even the Cardinals, because these were things that people agreed were going to enhance the city. So when they would come out with a measure, sometimes they would barely squeak by, just barely get by, but they would. And then by the time it was already built and paid for, everyone was just like, they were in love with it. They loved it. They thought it was the greatest thing. They thought it was the greatest investment. Even the people who were against it would kind of just go there and they'd be like, this is pretty spectacular. So Kanye sold his soul a little while ago and always been caught acting in occult rituals. I don't buy it for a minute that he's turned on the Illuminati. Okay. No, I hear you, man, but we're not going to talk about that on a YouTube live stream. I don't do that. I don't talk about those whole things because I don't want to play with any of that. Darren Croc, cities need to stop being suckers for these sports teams who fleece their citizens. Yeah, Chicago, they don't want to do anything but play in Soldier Field and Wrigley. They're like, no, we'll just keep playing in Soldier Field. We'll just keep playing in Wrigley. Nothing wrong here. Nothing to see here. Oh, man, Scott Glick. Well, we saw what happened with Joel Osteen. I actually like Joel Osteen. I'm not against that. A lot of people hate Joel Osteen. I don't know. I've listened to a lot of Joel Osteen sermons, and he made some money as a minister. And people say he's a sinister minister. I don't think he is. But if he's making money, Joel seems like an all right guy. I have nothing against Joel Osteen. I actually don't. I see where people are coming from. I know what Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John say. I know what Paul said. And, I know what Revelation says. And I know what David and Solomon and all that. But Joel preaches the prosperity gospel. And he lifts a lot of people out of depressing times when they fall into depressing times. Joel himself has said that he has had depressing times. He's there to uplift you. He's not there to scare you into loving Jesus or God or whatever. He's there to say that God wants to bless you. And that's Joel's thing. And Joel, a lot of people, he has the largest mega church in the United States too. So I see what you guys are saying. Like I said, I read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I know it says about a rich man passing through the eye of a needle, and give to the poor and the needy and all that. Okay, I don't really want to get into the religious stuff because that's such a. I mean, although we do talk religion and politics on this channel. Oh yeah, no, I agree with you guys about those minutes. Like, I can still watch Joel as long as he's not charging me. If he's still free on YouTube, I'll watch him. But he starts asking me to pay $5.99 a month to subscribe to his sermons. No, like if Joel wants to give a message for free, does Joel charge to get into his free Sunday worship? I don't think so. If you want to donate to Joel's cause because you like what Joel's doing, that's on you. But these, like in my mailbox today, I've got at least 5 or 6 different nonprofit ministries that send me things just because I had done it before. They like find my address and they keep following me around every time I move. And I'm like, get out of my mailbox. That then becomes them fleecing me. They're not, it's not on me. It's them pressuring me into believing that God's going to bless me if I donate to them. And I don't even know who these ministers are. And they're telling me that they're saving the world one children at a time and all this. And I'm like, at first I was like, that sounds like a great idea. Save the children. And then you find out that the CEO of the company takes like only 10% of the donations go to the actual children. And you're like, how much did the CEO make? And then, it's not saying that Save the Children is church, but there are churches like that who say they're feeding starving people. I'm Catholic who is against the Catholic Church. Imagine that. Okay. Like I said, I mean, I can't believe we're having this conversation because I usually don't like to have. These are conversations that we have when we're drinking rum and tequila and we're sitting around a bonfire and we're just like kind of like having conversation, not like on public television for everyone in the world to hear what we have to say, and or at a bar and like playing pool or something. Thoughts on the vaping epidemic? Oh man, I'm glad I never vaped. That's for sure. I don't know how much of it is sensationalism. I don't know how much is real. I know that I've never vaped, but I've heard that people are dying from vaping. So I would say don't let your kids vape. But vaping was supposed to be better than smoking cigarettes. All right. Island B says, Jeff, increasing property taxes only makes it worse off for people who can't afford housing. Sports venues should be 100% funded privately, just like high-speed rail systems. The government is the monopoly. Okay. That's silent. I'm not disagreeing. I'm not agreeing. That was a very loaded statement. In order to unpack that, we'd have to spend the whole rest of the live stream unpacking that statement because you just made a lot of comments that can be unpacked. Sports venues versus taxpayer funded versus private funded. I mean, that's a tough one. Third Power Prod says, relax, man, speak freely. Yeah, but when you have a live stream like this open to the public, you never know who could tune in. And all I'm saying is, especially when you do these live streams, you say one thing and it gets taken out of context. They could take a little snippet of the video and say, right here is where he said he wants, like if Island B wanted, he could just like go back to my video. He could go back and say, right here is where Jeff clearly said that the government should publicly fund the government should build the rail and with taxpayer money, not private. But if you fast forward beyond that, I said, but it depends on who's going to build it. What's the builder? What's their credentials? What experience do they have? And what's their business model? So things can be taken out of context. I see it all the time. They do it to Trump. Old Trump, they get him all the time. He'll say things like with the impeachment inquiry, they were like